Koi Kahless poek lord, koi poek bet poe. Joch moch machtelmoch jashuv, she moch chu me you. Mashuv mangangej machoch chu. Nibe in mach ach wov ku. Mashuv mangangej machoch chu. Nibe in mach ach wov ku. Bakwachech bed. Ejo kidjak va fumeri move patrach mashuv tak ku. Wamev kom mashuv tach. Maov! Ha! Bizarre Brain Comics. Nuknech traknampu. Korak chodjich. Klingon wo. Tachjaj. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I'm Gary, your host, Captain Korak Chod. And this is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. This time, I've got this graphic novel here I want to talk a little bit about, and I'll try to be relatively brief on it because it's a thick book, compiling, I think it was 5 issues of a mini-series. But first I want to point out, as I have so many times, that you don't necessarily have to buy your comics to enjoy comics and be a comic reader. This is a library book that I recently got, and one that I hadn't seen or anything about before, so it was an opportunity to check it out. And this is Star Trek Discovery, The Light of Kahless, an all Klingon story. It is a prequel to the first episode of Star Trek Discovery. And I've mentioned Discovery a few times here before. It is not our favorite Star Trek. We are not thrilled with it, although we still enjoy watching it. But it does not have the Star Trek feel. We are extremely unhappy with the portrayal of the Klingons, because they don't look like Klingons, and they only somewhat act like Klingons. And but the only good part about the show, as far as the Klingons were concerned, was that they have the best use of the Klingon language of any of the Star Trek TV series. Both the pronunciation and everything is just magnificent. But apparently a lot of people did not like this version of the Klingons, so that after that first season, they started looking more like your traditional Klingons. And but I also said, well, they're not, Klingons are not they're not a monolith. And this kind of helps that, except when it does show other Klingons, they're still looking like this. But they could their culture could be, different segments of culture, because these ones are basically religious fanatics. It was basically a cult. This version of their Klingons were basically a cult. But anyway, so this is a graphic novel from IDW from 2018. Star Trek Discovery, The Light of Kahless. Written by Kristen Beyer and Mike Johnson, with art by Tony Chastain. Kristen Beyer is a novelist, and she has written Star Trek novels, but she was also one of the writers on the show of Star Trek Discovery, and she was co-creator of this Star Trek Picard series. And Mike Johnson is also a writer in comics, doing a lot of stuff in other Star Trek media, like video games and the like. And Tony Chastain is a great artist. This is some marvelous stuff as far as the art is concerned. And as I said, it is a prequel, and it centers around the character T'Kuvma. It's been a while since I've seen the first season, so he's basically like basically like a prophet of of Kahless, and he's basically a cult leader. See, this is hard to make out, but this is that gigantic Klingon ship. And the story is mostly two Klingons who knew T'Kuvma, who was, I think he was killed by T'Kuvma was killed by geez, I forgot her name. She's only the main character in Discovery. Anyway, Michael Burnham, that's it. And this goes back to when he was a youngster and being bullied by his brothers. They're in a formerly great house, which is now down on its luck, and it's got this one gigantic ship, which is basically in ruins. And how they get the locals, the peasantry, as to work and over many years rebuild it and make it better and even more advanced. And T'Kuvma was not the best at fighting and stuff, and he wound up going to the monastery on Boreth for several years. We see some of his growth there. Look at this. It's some great stuff. We hate that style of armor and uniform, and we don't. The way they look more like one of the races of Xindi from that what was it, from that one season on Star Trek Enterprise. Than they do Klingons. But there they are. Oh, some really cool stuff. But there's one problem here, like here without the shirt and stuff. They don't have the Klingon anatomy, because if you're familiar with from Next Generation, they had a couple times with Worf without a shirt and stuff, and he had some. Just some unusual stuff on his chest and his spine and stuff like that, make them look different. And you see none of that reflected in this anatomy, and that's really the only artistic criticism. And it was probably not. But I wonder how Chastain drew this, because some of it looks like, well, actually all of it looks like it was done on a computer, or at least a laptop, and it may have incorporated textures and the like from photo, and especially in some of the backgrounds here, some of the photographic and photographic elements merged into the artwork. But the artwork and the visual storytelling is good. I enjoyed it for what it is, but having said that, here, like this, it's magnificent. All inside the ship, it looks just like the show, and I think it is from the show. And then the drawing of the characters is placed in there, and it is but extremely high contrast to make it look more drawn. I think. I don't know. Maybe he did it all by hand. I don't know. But if so, it would take for an extremely long time to draw all of this so precisely by hand. But maybe he did. I don't know. And then how his T'Kuvma's sister, he feels that she betrays him, and winds up with when he comes back to their to Konosh and to his family from Boreth for his sister's wedding, and they were betrayed by the other house. Their house was absorbed, and all his brothers were killed, and they were going to kill T'Kuvma, but it didn't work out that way. And they rebuilt the ship. He eventually created his own house, the House T'Kuvma, and lots of action, character development, and others points when the characters are speaking to one another, telling the story. And one of these characters that's being spoken to is Volk. And if you remember, Volk was the Klingon who was genetically altered to be human, and ultimately his Klingon persona was subsumed into the human persona that had taken over, and stuff like that. And this leads to some stuff that we saw in the second season, like the when T'Kuvma's sister has become the head honcho in the Empire. That I want to say Chancellor, but I don't think that's what they used. Maybe it was Chancellor. Anyway, and so it's some really great. Already has some good, nice, good action, and all this stuff is leading up to that first episode with some battle sequences and some relatively gruesome. Oh, made a mistake here. That's not Klingon blood. And of course, they make that mistake in the show and the various series as well. But remember, Klingon. It was established that Klingon blood is kind of a thick purplish color. And that was, of course, from Undiscovered Country, the movie Undiscovered Country, and that was done basically to keep from getting an R rating for the movie. But even in the other shows, they made them, even though they made reference to the fact that Klingon blood was different, when they showed it, they still showed red blood most of the time. Said that's not right. There were other times when they showed the purplish blood. So, and so. It was an enjoyable read, and it was a real treat seeing the art, and just for the fact that it's all Klingon. It would have been nice to have seen them drop in some Klingon words here, because in the show they were constantly, speaking Klingon very well. Klingon speech with subtitles, and it would have been nice to have just an occasional Klingon word dropped in now and again. And it shows how the light of Kahless, which is they take that ship and searching for the prophesied light of Kahless, and one of the higher ups actually makes the light of Kahless, and it was. Not real. It's the whole thing was to be a hoax on the people, because they wound up needing it as a something to rally behind, when actually T'Kuvma was supposedly the light of Kahless, and all that led into the Federation Klingon War, and it was enjoyable. Better than a lot of Star Trek stuff that I have read, and nowhere near as good as a lot that I have read too. So, and since it's the primary writer is from the show, you could consider it part of the canon for that show. Just doesn't work for canon for the rest of the Star Trek universe. So I want to thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe, leave your comments down below. Tell me, have you heard of this particular or any other? Because I haven't been able to keep up with IDW Star Trek stuff. But what you think of this? Like I said, some marvelous artwork, or any of the other stuff, or any of the other Star Trek-y type stuff out there. Tell me what you think of the show, this Discovery as well, compared to, as I said, Discovery does not feel like Star Trek when its spinoff, Strange New Worlds, feels very much like Star Trek. So, thanks again, and remember, comics are art.